Wait, stop! The cry cut through the low rumble of engines in the underground garage. It was a child's voice, sharper than any gunshot. Matteo De Luca's heart jolted. Matteo, a tall man with iron-gray hair and an impeccably tailored suit, was more accustomed to inspiring fear than feeling it, but right. Now his pulse was racing. One polished leather shoe hovered in mid-step as he spun toward the sound. The air reeked of gasoline and concrete dust beneath the neon lights, but suddenly everything smelled like danger. His bodyguards froze, hands twitching near holstered pistols. 3 black SUVs idled in a line, ready to escort the most feared Mafia boss in the city to his morning meeting. Everything was routine. Until now, Matteo De Luca had survived for over 20 years by keeping his life predictable and secure. The legendary Mafia kingpin ran his empire with meticulous routine because unpredictability usually meant death in his world. A little girl, no older than 7, stood at the bottom of the ramp that led down from the street. She was barefoot, panting, her brown hair coming loose from a ponytail. A tear in her mud-stained dress flapped as she trembled. Fear shone in her wide green eyes, but there was determination too. She had burst into a lion's den with nothing but a shout. Matteo's right-hand man, Bruno, recovered first. He stepped forward, raising his pistol at the intruder. "Halt!" he barked, voice echoing. The other guards fanned out, 10 trained guns now aimed at this single small girl. Their fingers hovered on triggers. In this world, hesitation meant death. Matteo held up a hand sharply. "Don't shoot," he ordered. His voice was calm, but carried an edge that cut through the tension. He stared at the girl blocking the path to his car. For a split second, he wondered if this was some kind of trick, a diversion. His dark eyes scanned the shadows for any sign of an ambush. Nothing, just this trembling child and the thundering echo of his own pulse. "Please," the girl gasped, chest heaving. "Don't start your car." "You can't!" "It's not safe." Her plea hung in the cold air. Bruno narrowed his eyes down the gun sights. "Who sent you?" He growled, steady and low. To him, everything unexpected was a threat, especially something unexpected in a secure garage that should have been impossible to breach. Matteo stepped forward slowly, raising a hand to lower Bruno's weapon. He noticed how the girl flinched at the movement but held her ground. The sheer courage it must have taken to run in here alone. Either she was telling the truth or this was a performance worthy of an Oscar. "It's all right. Piccolina," Matteo said, using the Italian term softly. "It's all right, little one." He kept his tone measured, almost gentle, a stark contrast to the deadly men surrounding them. "Tell me why. Why shouldn't we start the cars?" The girl swallowed hard. For a moment her resolve faltered, as if only now realizing a dozen guns were trained on her tiny frame. But she clenched her small fists. She forced the words out in a rush. "There's something under your car, signore. Something bad. I heard it ticking." A chill ran through Matteo's veins, ticking. Time seemed to slow. Matteo's gaze snapped from the girl to his lead SUV, his sleek black Mercedes. Underneath it, Bruno was already moving. He dropped into a crouch and duck-walked forward between Matteo's car and the next, pistol still in one hand. With the other hand, he pulled a flashlight from his belt and aimed the beam beneath the chassis. The concrete floor gleamed, slick and wet from the mornings, rain tracked in by tires. Bruno's light danced in the shadows. Matteo held his breath. Behind him, another guard cursed under his breath in Italian. Then Bruno froze. The flashlight halo landed on a metallic shape affixed to the undercarriage, right below where Matteo would be sitting, a shape with wires, and a small red blinking light. "Madonna Santa," Bruno rasped, voice suddenly dry. "Holy Mother of God." Matteo didn't need further confirmation. His blood turned to ice, but his mind snapped to focus. A bomb. There was a bomb under his car. "Everyone back!" Matteo roared, already lunging forward to grab the girl out of harm's way. His expensive suit jacket billowed as he moved faster than an executive half his age. Guards scattered, shouting into radios, sprinting for the exit ramps in practiced evacuation patterns. Bruno sprang backward, eyes wide. "It's ticking." "Timer's running!" he shouted, confirming the little girl's warning with panic, edging into the voice of a man who rarely felt fear. Matteo reached the girl and swept her up into his arms without slowing. "Hold on to me," he said, voice tight. The child clung to his neck, small fingers digging in. He could feel her heart hammering against his chest. Or was that his own heart? He couldn't tell. Tires screeched as some of the security team peeled out in the backup SUV, shouting alarms to clear the area. Another pair of guards raced to hit the emergency lockdown switch. Alarms began to blare, a whooping siren and flashing red lights washing over the dim garage. Matteo ran, the girl in his arms, Bruno at his side. Adrenaline turned seconds into molasses. They had to reach minimum safe distance. Behind the concrete pillar at the far end, boom! The blast behind them was deafening. A flash of heat and force lifted Matteo off his feet and flung him and Bruno forward like rag dolls. He twisted midair, wrapping his body around the little girl to shield her as they slammed to the hard ground. A thunderclap of pressure followed, and then the world filled with the sound of shattered glass and raining debris. For a heartbeat, Matteo couldn't hear anything but a high-pitched whine. Dust and smoke billowed past. Pain shot through his shoulder where he'd landed, but he bit it down. He uncurled his arms from around the child pressed to his chest, small body, still warm, alive. She was whimpering softly, stunned but conscious. Matteo's ears gradually picked up the chaos around them. Groans, distant shouting, the crackle of flames. Bruno coughed hoarsely a few feet away. He was already pushing himself up, one side of his face smeared with dirt, gun somehow still in hand. The remains of the lead SUV burned, a twisted black shell spitting flames and smoke. Matteo's bulletproof luxury car was now a charred wreck. If they had gotten in even seconds later, Matteo rose to a knee, still holding the little girl protectively. His muscles screamed in protest, but fury and relief dueled in his chest. That bomb would have killed him. Killed anyone in the vehicle, and likely the convoy behind too. The girl saved my life. The reality of it hit him like a second shockwave. If this frightened child hadn't braved a garage full of armed mobsters to shout a warning, he would be nothing but scorched meat and memories right now. He gently set her down. She swayed on her feet, coughing from the acrid smoke. Matteo removed his suit jacket despite the swirling dust and carefully draped it over her shoulders. The fine charcoal gray fabric nearly swallowed her small frame. Her bare feet were bleeding from cuts. She must have run over broken concrete or glass before ever reaching them. And yet she had run straight toward danger to save a stranger. Why? Bruno stalked toward the smoldering car, barking orders at a few guards who'd escaped the blast mostly unscathed. Check for any secondary devices, and someone get eyes on the exits, now. His military precision snapped everyone into action. Men moved with purpose despite shock, securing the area, scanning for any other threats that could be lurking in the smoke. Matteo rested a hand on the girl's shoulder. She flinched at the touch, then looked up at him. Her eyes brimmed with tears and soot streaked her pale cheeks. But she set her jaw bravely. You did well, Matteo said quietly, so only she could hear. The faintest tremble ran through his voice, an after effect of adrenaline and the enormity of what had just happened. You were very, very brave. She saved his life. A little girl whose name he didn't even know. Matteo realized he was staring into her eyes, and something about them tugged at a long-buried memory. An echo of a face from years ago. He opened his mouth to ask her name. Boss! Bruno shouted from near the wreckage. We found something. Matteo tore his gaze away from the child. He helped her sit against a concrete pillar out of immediate harm's way, then strode toward Bruno, bits of glass crunched under his Italian leather shoes as he neared the destroyed vehicle. The heat from the fire warmed one side of his face. Bruno pointed with the muzzle of his pistol at a small device, lying on the ground amid scattered debris. It was a cell phone, or what remained of it. The screen was shattered, the casing blackened, but it was intact enough to recognize. A burner phone, Bruno said grimly. Probably the detonator connected to the bomb somehow. It might have failed to trigger remotely, so they set a timer as backup. Cowards. Matteo picked up the ruined phone with a handkerchief, his jaw tight. This was a cheap disposable phone commonly used by street dealers and hitmen alike, but something taped on the back caught his eye. A tiny plastic rectangle no bigger than a flash drive. An SD memory card. The edges of Matteo's vision pulsed with anger. Whoever planted this bomb hadn't just tried to kill him. They left a message. Perhaps a video or note on this card. Or worse, it could be a calling card meant to taunt him with the knowledge of who was behind it. He handed the phone and card to Bruno. Get this to IT, see if anything can be recovered from it. Bruno nodded and hurried off, already barking into his radio for the tech team to come down from the penthouse. Matteo turned back to the little girl. She sat huddled under his jacket, knees drawn up to her chest. The initial burst of courage that propelled her here seemed to have drained, and now the reality of what happened was catching up. Her small frame shook with quiet sobs that she was trying and failing to suppress. He approached slowly, kneeling down on one knee to meet her eye level. For a moment he didn't speak. In the harsh red emergency lights, the girl looked so fragile, like a sparrow, that had flown straight into a storm, to warn an eagle of danger. It was the bravest, most foolhardy thing he could imagine, and it had worked. Carefully, Matteo reached out and brushed a piece of glass from her hair. "Hey," he said softly, "you're safe now. I promise." She looked at him with those bright green eyes, full of tears that finally began spilling over. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I didn't know what else to do, but I saw him put it there, the bomb. I saw him." Matteo's stomach knotted. This child had seen the person who planted the device, the person who tried to assassinate him in his own secure garage. He gently but firmly clasped her shoulders, leaning closer. "You saw who did this?" His voice was low, intense. "Do you know what he looked like?" She nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "He came in through that door," she whispered, pointing a trembling finger toward a metal side door by the stairwell. A door that should have been locked and guarded. It hung slightly ajar. Matteo felt a fresh wave of anger seeing it. "I was hiding there," the girl went on. "I heard footsteps. I thought it was safe to come out, but then I saw a man under your car. He had tools. He put that thing under it, then he ran away. I didn't know how to open the big door to get out and chase him. And then you all came and I was scared you'd start the cars." Matteo exchanged a hard glance with one of his men near the stairwell door. The guard's face was ashen. He had been posted there earlier. Someone had left that door open, or someone had failed to secure it. Unacceptable. "Did you recognize this man?" Matteo asked, forcing patience. He was interrogating a 7-year-old who just saved him. He modulated his tone to something between gentle and urgent. "Have you seen him before?" The girl shook her head quickly. "No, I only saw his back mostly. He was wearing a cap and a jacket, but..." She scrunched her eyes shut, concentrating. "He was maybe tall, not super tall, but taller than me. And he had, I think, gray hair sticking out from under the cap." Gray hair. Matteo frowned. "An older man?" That narrowed it down slightly, but not enough. Many of his associates were older. Many of his enemies, too. "Anything else?" "Did he say anything? Did you hear his voice?" She sniffled, thinking hard. "He was talking on the phone, quietly. I only heard a little. He had an accent. Kind of like yours." She looked at him timidly, as if worried he might be offended. Matteo felt a pulse in his temple. Like his accent, Italian unmistakably. If true, that meant the bomber might not have been some random thug or foreign hitman. It could be someone from his own organization, or someone impersonating. This was getting worse by the minute. Inside job. It had to be if someone got a bomb in here. Matteo exhaled slowly, reining in his rage. He patted the girl's shoulder gently. "You've done very well. I'm grateful." The word felt too small for the depth of gratitude, and shock swirling inside him. He stood up, turning to two of his nearest men. "Enzo, search every inch of this garage. Check the other cars, the walls, everything for additional explosives or tampering. And lock this place down. No one in or out until I say so." His voice was steel. The men jumped to obey. Bruno returned at a jog, nodding to Matteo. "Techs are on it. They'll see if they can pull data from that card. It wasn't directly in the blast. Might have something, also." He lowered his voice, eyeing the frightened child. "We've swept the premises. Whoever planted it is long gone. Likely left before we even got down here." Matteo expected as much. The coward had probably been watching for the explosion from a safe distance, perhaps even expecting to watch Matteo die. The thought made his fists clench. He was alive, and that meant whoever did this just signed their own death warrant, once he found them. He had to find out who was behind this, and fast. But first the living. He looked down at the little girl again. A bomb just went off yards from her, but she seemed more concerned about being in trouble. Her huge eyes looked up at him anxiously, as if still unsure whether she was safe here or about to be punished for trespassing into a world she should never have seen. Matteo crouched once more to her level, ignoring the ache in his shoulder and back from hitting the ground. "Miss," he began softly. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Sophia," she said in a small voice. "Sophia." The name sent a pang through, Mateo's chest unexpected. His throat tightened for a second. That had been the name he and Elena once discussed if they ever had a daughter. A coincidence, surely. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the present. Sophia, he repeated gently. I'm Mateo. I know you're scared, but you did the right thing. You saved us. Sophia glanced over at the burning SUV and winced. I didn't save the car, she said. A child's attempt at lightening the horror with a tiny joke. The car exploded, but you're alive. Mateo almost smiled despite everything. He saw Bruno raise an eyebrow, not expecting humor at a time like this. But Mateo recognized it for what it was. A brave kid trying to cope. No, Mateo agreed. The car is beyond saving. But cars can be replaced. He put a hand under her chin, delicately, and tilted her face up. From the grim scene. People can't. You saved me. And Bruno, and everyone else who would have been in that car. The weight of that sank in even deeper as he said it aloud. She truly had saved all their lives. Sophia's lower lip quivered as if she might cry again, but she steadied herself. I just didn't want you to get hurt, she whispered. Not after what happened to my mom. Her voice cracked on the last word. Mom, Mateo. Felt that pang again. Sharper now. He narrowed his eyes. What happened to your mother, Sophia? Sophia looked around at the circle of men now standing at a respectful distance. Some were on phones, coordinating cleanup and continuing to secure the area. But Mateo could tell they were also listening intently. They were curious who this mysterious child was, and how she ended up here. She leaned closer to Mateo as if fearful of saying it too loud. He bent his head nearer. Her next words came out in a trembling rush. A bad man took her. I think he's going to hurt her. I got away and I didn't know where to go. Then I saw that door open and I hid. And then I saw the man with the bomb. Her breath hitched with rising panic now that she was speaking of her mother. She grabbed Mateo's forearm with surprising strength for a child. Please, sir. My mom's still with those bad men. We have to help her. You have to help her. They wanted to use us to get to you. Mateo felt the blood drain from his face, only to surge back in a hot rush of rage. His mind raced. Use us to get to you. This girl and her mother, could it be? He searched Sophia's soot-smudged face again, that sense of familiarity sparking stronger. Green eyes like Elena's, the slight curl of her hair at the ends. He hadn't seen Elena in years, 7 years to be exact. A lump formed in his throat as realization and disbelief warred in his mind. 7 years ago, his marriage had shattered. Elena Alvarez had walked out of his life. For good, she said. Their world had been too dangerous, she said. He had begged her to stay, promised to keep her safe. But a life of crime is no life for the person you love. In the end, letting her go was the hardest thing he ever did. He never saw her again, until maybe now. Your mother's name? Mateo asked quietly, heart thudding. Is it Elena? Elena Alvarez? Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. How did you know? She asked in a tiny voice. The breath Mateo had been holding escaped in a shaky exhale. His vision blurred for a moment as memories crashed in. Elena's laugh. Elena's tear-streaked face the day she left. Elena's dark hair spread across a pillow in sunnier mornings long past. And now Elena was in the hands of someone trying to kill him. A deadly betrayal unfolding that had ensnared the only woman he ever loved and a child that, oh dear God, might be. He forced himself to focus. Later he could drown in the implications. Right now, Elena needed him. And Sophia needed him to keep it together. Mateo placed both hands on Sophia's shoulders reassuringly. Listen to me carefully, he said, quiet but firm. Where did you last see your mother? Do you know where they took her? She wiped her eyes on the oversized jacket sleeve. We were at our apartment. 2 men came and grabbed us this morning. They said we had to come with them. They had guns. Her voice hitched. They put me and Mom in a van. Mom was trying to fight, but one of them hit her. And Sophia squeezed her eyes shut, the painful memory making her shake. Mateo's hands gently squeezed her shoulders in support. He could feel white-hot, anger boiling in his gut at the thought of Elena being struck. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe. Take your time. Sophia took a breath. They were talking about you, she continued. They said he'll come for her. The boss will come when he finds out. Mom told me to run the first chance I got. When the van stopped at a light, She kicked the driver's seat and the door was unlocked, so I jumped out. Sophia's voice trembled with guilt. I didn't want to leave her, but she screamed at me to run. So I did. I ran and ran. I heard them chasing me. I hid in a building. This building, I think. A door to the stairs was open, so I went in and hid there. Then I heard someone else come in, and that was the man with the bomb. After he left, I heard engines, and I ran down to warn you. Matteo was stunned by the story spilling from her lips. Elena had been kidnapped to lure him. The bomb was planted to kill him. This was not random or separate events. This was a coordinated strike. They had intended to kill him and had taken his ex-wife hostage, perhaps to ensure he came to them if the bomb failed, or as leverage. And by pure chance or fate, Sophia had slipped away and delivered a critical warning that saved his life. His pulse pounded as he processed the layers of betrayal implied. Only someone who knew about Elena, someone from his past, or someone close enough to learn his secrets, could have orchestrated this. Very few people even knew Elena existed, or that Matteo still quietly watched over her from afar in case enemies ever tried to hurt her. That list of people was vanishingly small. Bruno had come closer, listening with a deepening scowl. That means whoever did this has Elena, he said, voice grim. They'll expect you to go after her. Likely another trap. I know, Matteo answered softly. He looked at Sophia, who gazed back with desperate hope, trusting that these dangerous men would save her mother because she had saved one of their own. Matteo felt something twist in his chest. He had vowed long ago to keep Elena safe by staying away. That hadn't been enough. Now she was in the crossfire used as bait. His eyes hardened. If they wanted a war, he would bring them hell. But first he had to ensure Sophia's safety. Matteo gently pried off his jacket from her thin shoulders and slid it back on himself, dusting off debris. Then he scooped Sophia into his arms once more. She yelped in surprise, but he held her firmly. I'm taking you upstairs. Sophia, you'll be safe in my home while we figure this out. I promise. Her hands clutched at his shirt instinctively. She nodded, too exhausted to protest. Bruno stepped in front of a few gawking guards, clearing a path. You heard the boss, he snapped. We escort them up and lock this place down behind us, as Matteo carried Sophia toward the private elevator that led up to his penthouse. He paused and looked back at the devastation in the garage, the still-burning SUV, the scattered bullet casings from his men's ready guns, the smoke swirling red in the emergency lights. So much for predictable patterns. This was an attack unlike any he'd seen in years. Whoever had done this thought they had him, thought they were ahead. They were wrong. Matteo held Sophia a little tighter as the elevator door slid open. He stepped inside with Bruno and 2 other guards. His eyes burned, both from smoke and from the fire of rage building behind them. They tried to kill me. They dragged my family into this. This betrayal would not go unanswered. As the elevator began its ascent, Matteo kept his gaze on the steel doors, reflected in them the image of a soot-streaked Mafia king holding a vulnerable child in his arms. An odd sight, perhaps, but in that reflection he saw clearly, his past and present colliding. Innocence and guilt intertwined, and in the child's eyes when he glanced down, he saw trust. He would not betray that trust. No matter what it took, he would unravel who was behind this deadly betrayal, and he would save Elena. For 7 years he had lived as if she were dead to him, but he had never stopped quietly loving her from afar. Losing her now was not an option, and if the traitor thought using Elena and an innocent child as pawns would break Matteo De Luca's spirit, they were gravely mistaken. It only stoked the furnace of his wrath. In the soft ding of the elevator, Matteo whispered to himself a vow, a promise shaped in silence. Whoever you are, I'm coming for you. The doors slid shut, carrying them upward to safety. Little did Matteo know, the war had only just begun, and it was far from over. Matteo's penthouse crowned the top floor of the building, a modern palace of glass and marble overlooking the city he ruled. But now its sweeping skyline views and luxurious calm meant nothing to him. He paced in the living area, phone pressed to his ear, issuing rapid orders. His men were already mobilizing, securing other properties, checking on his remaining family and assets in case this was the opening strike of a wider war. Outside, late morning sun poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, oblivious to the storm of violence and betrayal brewing below. Sophia sat curled up on Matteo's leather sofa, wrapped in a soft blanket someone had given her. Freshly bandaged scrapes marked her knees and feet. She sipped hot chocolate from a mug with shaky hands, One of Mateo's maids had made it to soothe her. The child stared blankly at the muted television across the room, but Mateo doubted she was really watching. Shock was setting in. The adrenaline that carried her through the morning was fading, leaving exhaustion and delayed terror in its wake. He ended his latest call and took a steadying breath. On the table nearby lay a folded piece of paper. Sophia's letter from Elena. The moment they arrived upstairs, Sophia had tugged on his sleeve, eyes huge. "Mom said to give you this. She hid it in my dress before I ran." Her voice had been so small. Mateo took the paper with gentle hands. Across its front, written in hurried, scrawling penmanship, were the words, "Please read this before it's too late." His chest tightened as he unfolded the note. Elena's handwriting leapt off the page, each pen stroke etched with desperation. "Mateo, if you're reading this, I pray Sophia found you in time. They took me. They want to draw you out. Someone inside helped them. Be careful. Trust no one. Please protect our daughter. I'm sorry I never told you about her. I only wanted to keep her safe from your world. But she's in it now. If I don't make it, tell her I love her. Elena." Mateo turned away, overcome by a swell of emotion. Our daughter. The realization hit him like a bolt. Elena had borne him a child in secret, all to keep her safe. Joy, shock, and fierce protectiveness surged through him, and between the lines, he could feel the echo of Elena's love for him. Undimmed by years apart, if Sophia was his, he would move heaven and earth to protect her, and to save Elena from whoever dared harm them. He crossed back to the sofa where Sophia sat. Gently, he placed a hand on her head. "How are you holding up, little one?" he asked quietly. Sophia looked up at him, her eyes red from crying but now dry. She managed a tiny shrug. "I'm okay," she whispered, though her voice trembled. She clutched the mug tightly as if focusing on its warmth. Mateo sat beside her, careful to keep a respectful distance so as not to startle her. It was strange, almost surreal, to be here like this, sitting with a child, on his sofa in the aftermath of an assassination attempt. How many times had he come home from violent business and sat right here alone, drowning memories of Elena with a glass of scotch? Now Elena's child, his child, was here instead, needing comfort he wasn't sure how to give. He cleared his throat softly. "Sophia, your mother is a very brave woman. She did the right thing telling you to run, and you were incredibly brave to come find me." Sophia's lip quivered. "I feel so scared now," she admitted in a tiny voice. "I left her with them. What if they hurt her because I got away?" Mateo's jaw tightened. "They won't," he said firmly. He forced steadiness into his tone for her sake. "I won't let them. I'm going to get her back, whatever it takes." There was iron in his voice, a promise forged in blood. Sophia studied him, perhaps sensing that iron resolve. You will?" "Yes," Mateo nodded. "I will." He hesitated, then added softly, "Elena, your mom, she is very important to me. I never wanted anything bad to happen to her. I'm so sorry it has." Sophia looked down at her mug. "She told me about you," she said quietly. "Not much, but I know you were very important to her." Mateo felt a dull ache in his chest at her words. For a moment, he didn't trust himself to speak. To a child, how do you explain the mistakes and love of a lifetime? He opened his mouth to tell Sophia the truth, that he wasn't just her mother's friend, but stopped himself. This wasn't the moment. A soft knock sounded at the penthouse door. "Boss, it's me," came Bruno's voice from the other side. Mateo rose and opened the door to admit Bruno and another man, Arturo, one of his tech experts. Both looked tense. "We have something," Bruno said without preamble. His gaze flickered to Sophia on the couch. "Maybe we should talk over here." He subtly jerked his head toward a far corner of the living area. Mateo nodded and walked with them a few steps away, still within sight of Sophia but out of easy earshot. Arturo held up the charred burner phone and a micro SD card in a plastic evidence bag. "We pulled data off the card, sir," he reported, voice low. "It's a video file, heavily encrypted, but we managed to play it." The young man swallowed, nervous. Mateo's eyes narrowed. "Show me." Arturo took out a small tablet and tapped a few times. An image popped up on the screen. The frame was dark and a bit grainy, but Mateo immediately recognized Elena's face at the center. She was alive. Mateo's heart leapt seeing that, but the sight was gut-wrenching. She sat on a concrete floor, arms tied behind her back. Blood trickled from a cut on her temple. A tall man in a black ski mask stood behind her, gripping her shoulder firmly. Another masked figure briefly leaned into frame, holding a card in front of Elena's face with today's date and the word Lanoyam. Arturo hit play. The video began, audio crackling. Elena's voice came through, strained but clear. Mateo? She drew a shuddering breath. If you see this, it means they didn't kill you yet. She gave a desperate, pleading look into the camera. They want you to come to them, please. It's a trap. Don't fall for it. A gloved hand yanked her hair hard. Elena cried out but continued, her voice breaking. They said if you don't come, they'll kill me. If you do come, they'll kill you. Either way, they think they win. Her eyes sparkled with tears. I know you'll come anyway. You always tried to save me, even from myself. I'm sorry, Mateo. I'm so sorry. The masked man behind her cut in, voice heavily distorted by some filter. Enough. Elena winced as the grip in her hair tightened. The distorted voice addressed the camera now. Mateo De Luca, if you care about this woman's life, you will come to Warehouse. 12 at Pier 39 tonight at midnight. Alone. If we see any of your goons lurking about, Elena's brains will paint the floor. Mateo's blood ran cold at the casual cruelty in the electronically lowered voice. It continued. Come alone and unarmed. Perhaps we'll let the lady live. You have my word that if you cooperate, the child will remain unharmed as well. Mateo's fists clenched. The child. They still thought they had Sophia. The voice chuckled. Yes, we have your little girl too. Poor thing. She misses her papa. Don't keep us waiting. Mateo. Midnight. Warehouse 12. Elena struggled in her captor's hold. No, don't do it, Mateo, she screamed suddenly, her voice raw with anguish. They'll kill you! Don't. The screen abruptly went black. The video ended. Mateo realized his hands were shaking with barely contained rage. He forced them steady and lifted his eyes to Bruno and Arturo, who were watching him anxiously. He inhaled deeply, then exhaled, attempting to cool the inferno inside enough to think clearly. Elena was alive for now. They believed they had Sophia. Thank God that wasn't true. That gave him a tiny sliver of advantage. They didn't know their hostage plan was incomplete. Still, the situation was dire. Midnight at the docks, less than 14 hours from now. He had until then to identify who they were, flush out the traitor, and formulate a plan to save Elena and outwit a trap that was clearly meant to be his execution. Bruno broke the silence, voice hushed and urgent. Boss, I don't like this. If they think they have Sophia, they could be planning to use her as leverage on site. But since she's safe, that's one edge for us. We could... Mateo held up a hand to stop Bruno. His mind was racing, connecting pieces. The distorted voice had claimed we have your little girl. There was more than one kidnapper present, clearly. Elena's letter said someone inside helped them, and Sophia had overheard the bomber speak. Italian with an accent similar to Mateo's own. Someone close, possibly someone in this very building, or one of his capos. He lowered his voice further. Arturo, who has seen this video so far? Just me and our tech chief, sir. We pulled it privately as instructed. Good. Keep it that way. Don't let word of this spread yet, understood? Yes, boss. Mateo turned to Bruno, eyes stony. Gather the capos for a meeting here in 1 hour. Only my top lieutenants. No one else is to know why. Say it's for emergency war planning. Within an hour, Mateo's top lieutenants assembled in his study. Marco Finelli, Docs. Luca, Finances, Dario, Security, and Roberto Vernesi, Consigliere. Mateo steeled himself and laid out the situation in a low, cold voice. He described the car bomb, the breach in security, and Elena's abduction. As he spoke, the men exchanged shocked, angry glances. Who could have done this? Inside our own circle? Marco growled, cracking his knuckles. Only a few people even knew about Elena, Mateo said bluntly, eyeing each man in turn. This had to be someone with inside information and access. Bruno, standing guard by the door, interjected. Whoever left that stairwell door open had to use a high-level code. Only a handful of us have that clearance. An uneasy silence followed. All eyes drifted, however briefly, toward Roberto, the only person present who had been around in Elena's time. Roberto bristled, color rising in his cheeks. And you imply I snuck into the garage to do this? He said, voice tight. Bruno, you wound me. I was across town all morning dealing with that union negotiation. Matteo assigned me. Dario nodded slowly, backing him up. It's true. Roberto was on a call with me at 8:15 about that issue, and I heard city traffic in the background. Roberto spread his hands, looking around at the others with a pained expression. I would never betray this family, Elena. She was dear to us all back then. I've kept quiet about her for years out of respect. Matteo held Roberto's gaze a moment, then inclined his head. All right, we won't start accusing our own without proof. Still, suspicion coiled in his gut. For now, we focus on getting Elena back and dealing with whoever orchestrated this. Roberto cleared his throat and leaned forward. We know they want you at Pier 39 by midnight. I say we take the fight to them first. Enzo Rossi's name keeps coming up. I propose we hit the Rossi crew at the docks this afternoon before they expect it. They might be holding Elena there. We have enough firepower to storm the place and catch them off guard. Luca shifted nervously. Hitting them early might put Elena in immediate danger. If they see us coming, they could retaliate against her. And leaving her with those animals until midnight is safer? Roberto countered, slamming his palm on the desk. Every minute we wait, she's at risk. A swift strike is our best chance. Marco grunted in agreement. Just give the word, boss. My boys know the docks. We can surround Warehouse 12 and hit 'em hard by 3 o'clock, before they know what's happening. Matteo raised a hand, calming the burst of fervor. His dark eyes flicked between them. We won't rush in blind. He shot a subtle glance at Bruno, then addressed the group. Bruno and Luca will scout the warehouse first, quietly. I want eyes on how many hostiles and if Elena's even there. We move only when we have the advantage. Roberto opened his mouth to protest, then nodded reluctantly. A quick recon, sure, but don't take too long. They gave us a deadline. His tone held an urgency that Matteo didn't entirely trust. Finelli, muster your best shooters and have them ready in vans near Pier 39, Matteo continued. Luca, monitor police chatter and make sure we don't have any unwanted interference. Dario, coordinate secure comms for everyone. We strike the moment I give the go. Understood? The men affirmed in unison. The plan was set. Bruno nodded sharply. He understood at once what Matteo was implying. They might catch the traitor by his behavior under scrutiny. I'll call them immediately, he said. He hurried off to use a secure line. Matteo handed the tablet back to Arturo. Make a copy of that video and give it to me. Then wipe the rest. I don't want others stumbling on it. And Arturo, good work. The tech specialist dipped his head and left to do as asked. Matteo stood there a moment, rubbing his temple. The pieces of this deadly puzzle were assembling into an ugly picture. An insider working with an outside crew to remove him, likely to take over his empire, with the assistance of the Rossi family or some other rival. Elena was bait. The bomb was plan A, the midnight trap, plan B. He moved back toward Sofia, who was watching him anxiously. She had not heard the video, but she had certainly seen Matteo's face while he watched it. He knew he wasn't able to hide the concern and anger. Did you see my mom? Is she okay? Sofia asked timidly. Matteo forced a small reassuring smile. I did. She's okay so far. She's holding on, and she was very brave. She even told me not to walk into the trap they set. That's how strong your mom is. Sofia's eyes lit with relief on hearing that her mother was alive, but her brow furrowed. Trap? Matteo nodded. The people who took her want me to meet them tonight. They want to hurt us, but don't worry. We're not going to do exactly what they say. We're going to be smarter than them. He hoped that was true. Sofia looked down, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. They said they have me too, didn't they? I heard a little. She must have caught some of Bruno's conversation or read Matteo's expression. Sharp kid. They did, Matteo confirmed. They don't know you escaped and that you're safe. That gives us a surprise advantage. We'll keep it that way. Sofia looked up at him with a fierce glint. Sofia suddenly stepped forward. Let me come with you. I can help save Mom. Matteo knelt and squeezed her shoulder gently. No, Piccolina. This is too dangerous. I need you safe. Tears filled her eyes. But I don't want you to get hurt. He forced a confident smile. I'll be okay. I promise I'll bring Mom back. Trust me, all right? After a moment, Sofia nodded bravely, swiping at her tears. He motioned Bruno aside for a second and murmured, Take her to the safe house on 7th Street. The one with the reinforced basement. Only people you trust on guard. If anything goes wrong, you get her out of the city. Bruno hesitated. Boss, I should be with you. Roberto, Bruno began, concern in his eyes. Matteo shook his head. I'll handle Roberto. I need someone I trust to protect my daughter. Bruno gave a sharp nod. Yes, boss. By late afternoon, Bruno returned from the reconnaissance, his expression grimly satisfied. Recon complete. The place is crawling with armed men. They've turned Warehouse 12 into a fortress. Snipers on the roof, lookouts at every approach. Matteo's eyes flashed. Elena? Bruno nodded. Luca got a visual through binoculars. They have a woman matching her description in an office room on the second floor, tied to a chair, alive as of 15 minutes ago. Matteo exhaled relief. Sophia, sitting nearby, perked up at hearing that. Bruno continued. We also confirmed at least a dozen hostiles inside, maybe more. Some looked like Rossi's men, but others our guys didn't recognize. Likely hired guns or muscle from out of town. It's a serious army. Matteo processed that. A dozen or more enemies dug in. If Roberto planned an ambush, he certainly prepared thoroughly. With Marco and Dario's soldiers, Matteo could muster an assault, but casualties would be high. A frontal attack might get Elena killed if the captors panicked. No, he needed cunning. Bruno lowered his voice. Also, boss, we spotted someone. Roberto. Matteo went very still. Where? Arriving at the warehouse. A black sedan rolled up at the back entrance while we watched. We couldn't get too close. But I saw Roberto step out and go inside, flanked by two of his personal guards. Despite expecting it, Matteo felt a sting of pain pierce his gut. Roberto was there, at the heart of the trap. It was true then. His mentor was the traitor. Sophia sensed his body tense. She looked between him and Bruno, not fully understanding but picking up the mood. What happened? She whispered. Matteo forced calm and scooped her up gently. I have to go out for a bit, little one. Bruno will stay with you and keep you safe. I promise I'll come back with your mom. Her eyes searched his. After a moment, she nodded and wrapped her arms around his neck in a sudden hug. Please, be careful. Matteo's throat tightened. He gave her a reassuring squeeze. I will. You stay with Bruno and do what he says. I'll be back before you know it. He passed Sophia into Bruno's protective arms. Bruno met Matteo's gaze. Be safe, boss, he said quietly. Matteo clasped Bruno's shoulder. I couldn't have done any of this without you, amico. Thank you. Bruno gave a small nod and a rare smile. Always, boss. Outside. The first hint of dawn was coloring the sky in hues of pink and gold as Bruno. And the others took their leave, giving the family some privacy. Finally, Matteo made one more call, this one to Enzo Rossi himself. The rival boss answered after a few rings, wary. Matteo, Enzo greeted coolly. I assume you've heard someone tried to blow me up this morning, Matteo said, voice like ice. They kidnapped Elena Alvarez. If you or your men had any hand in it, now's the time to speak. Enzo's indignant scoff crackled over the line. I had nothing to do with it. I don't hurt civilians, and I'm not foolish enough to bomb your fortress without a guarantee. Whoever did this, it wasn't me. Somebody in my circle seems to think we're at war, Matteo pressed. Then look inside your own house, Enzo replied sharply. You think it's a coincidence they grabbed your ex-wife? Sounds like someone close to you sold you out. Matteo's grip tightened on the phone. He already suspected as much, but hearing it from Enzo made his blood boil. If I find out you're lying, he growled. Enzo gave a humorless laugh. You'll do what you have to, DeLuca. But I'm not your enemy today. Whoever planned this played us both. Matteo was silent, absorbing that. For once, Enzo's tone carried no guile. All right, Matteo muttered. Good to know. Buona fortuna, Matteo, Enzo said in parting. For what it's worth, I hope you get her back. Matteo hung up without another word. Enzo Rossi's denial rang true, and it only cemented Matteo's resolve. The traitor was indeed someone in his own ranks, and he was going to unmask them by day's end. He spent the rest of the day in taut anticipation, making preparations and pacing the halls of his penthouse like a restless lion. Every minute that ticked by with Elena in enemy hands was agony. But Matteo forced himself to stay patient and stick to the plan. By the time Bruno and Luca returned from their reconnaissance that afternoon, Matteo's resolve was sharpened to a knife's edge. Night fell, and Matteo prepared to meet fate on his own terms. He donned a black tactical coat and checked the clip in his custom Beretta pistol, fully loaded. He slipped 2 extra magazines into his pocket and a knife into his boot. If Roberto wanted a war, Matteo would give him one. A convoy of his loyal soldiers assembled quietly in the garage. Loading into unmarked vans, Marco and Dario's teams were in position near Pier 39, awaiting Matteo's command. They would move in when the time was right. But Matteo had made one thing clear: not until Elena was safe. Under cover of darkness, Matteo drove himself toward the docks in a nondescript sedan. The city lights thinned as he neared the waterfront. Warehouses loomed like silent giants along the piers, their corrugated metal sides gleaming faintly under street lamps. He parked 2 blocks away in an alley shrouded by stacked shipping containers. A damp breeze off the bay carried the smell of salt and diesel. Far out on the water, a foghorn bellowed its lonely warning. Matteo moved like a shadow between warehouses, a silenced pistol in hand. Ahead, Warehouse 12 jutted into the sky, 2 stories of concrete and sheet metal, light seeping from a few grimy windows. As promised, at exactly 11:45 p.m., a section of the dock's power grid went dark. The lights in and around Warehouse 12 abruptly blinked out, plunging the area into darkness. Taking advantage of the blackout, Matteo slipped around the rear loading dock. A single overhead lamp by the back door flickered and died. The loading bay door was slightly ajar. Clinging to the shadows, Matteo slid through the gap. Inside, the warehouse was a cavern of darkness, punctuated by emergency red lights near exits. Stacks of wooden crates and metal shelving units created an industrial maze. Voices echoed faintly from deeper within, laced with tension. Matteo ghosted between towering shelves. Up ahead, a narrow metal staircase led to the second-floor offices, likely, where Elena was held. One guard stood at its base, a cigarette ember glowing in the dark. In a heartbeat, Matteo lunged out, his arm looped around the guard's neck from behind, the other hand clamping down over the man's mouth. The guard jerked in surprise, but Matteo held tight, dragging him backward behind a tall crate. The guard's muffled cries were short-lived. With a swift chokehold, he went limp and collapsed at Matteo's feet. Pistol raised, Matteo crept up the metal stairs. On the landing, a faint strip of light shone under the closed office door. Muffled voices came from within. He pressed his ear to the door. Midnight soon. Still no sign of him? Growled a harsh voice. A familiar voice answered, dripping with irritation. He'll come. The man's predictable, if nothing else, especially with his beloved Elena on the line. It was Roberto. Elena's voice, hoarse but defiant, spoke up. Matteo isn't stupid, Roberto. If he knows you're behind this, he'll never give you what you want. A hard slap cracked. Elena cried out in pain. Matteo saw red fury pounding in his ears. Shut up, Roberto snapped. Don't pretend you know him better than I do, woman. He's probably rallying his goons right now to storm in heroically. Counting on it, in fact. Another male voice chuckled. And our men are ready for that. This'll be a bloodbath. Matteo's teeth clenched. He had heard enough. He gently thumbed the pin off a flashbang grenade from his coat. Taking a deep breath, he eased the office door open a few inches. No one noticed in the dimness, and rolled the grenade inside. A second later, the night was torn by a blinding flash and a concussive bang. Shouts of shock erupted within. Matteo burst through the door, pistol raised. Inside the small office, chaos reigned. 2 of Roberto's henchmen stumbled about, clutching their eyes and ears, stunned by the flashbang. Elena, tied to a chair at the center of the room, blinked against the brightness, dazed but unharmed. Roberto, shielded behind Elena, recovered quickly. He fired a wild shot in Matteo's direction. Matteo dived behind a rusty filing cabinet as a bullet whizzed past, smacking into the wall. Below, the entire warehouse had erupted into chaos. Muzzle flashes strobed in the dark below, illuminating the rows of crates in eerie snapshots. Matteo's men poured in from both entrances like silent shadows, cutting down the panicked mercenaries before they could regroup. Gunshots cracked sharp and echoing, punctuated by screams and the thuds of bodies hitting concrete. Taken by surprise and half-blind in the darkness, the enemy stood little chance. Matteo took advantage of the confusion. One of Roberto's goons, the lean, rat-faced man who had chuckled earlier, staggered nearby, blinking furiously. Matteo put 2 silenced rounds in his chest. The man crumpled without a sound. Another guard near the door fumbled for his rifle, eyes streaming from the flash. Matteo dropped him with a single shot to the head. The thud of the body dropping coincided with a chorus of Gunfire and shouting from the warehouse floor. His teams were sweeping through, gaining the upper hand. Roberto, coughing in the lingering smoke of the flashbang, realized the tide had turned. With a snarl, he yanked Elena up from the chair and wrapped one arm around her neck, pressing his pistol to her temple. "Stop right there, Mateo," he barked, eyes wild. Mateo emerged from cover slowly, gun trained on Roberto. His blood boiled seeing Roberto use Elena as a human shield. Elena's eyes found Mateo's across the room. She was bruised and terrified, but upon seeing him, a flicker of hope lit in her face. "It's over, Roberto," Mateo growled, inching sideways to get a clearer angle. "Drop the gun." Roberto's lip curled. "Not a chance, boy." Down below, Mateo could hear the last stutters of gunfire as his men mopped up the remaining resistance. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, likely alarmed by the brief cacophony of battle. Time was running out to end this. "You ungrateful little wretch!" Roberto hissed, edging toward the door with Elena as his hostage. "I trained you. I raised you. And you think you can just replace me? Take everything I built?" Mateo's eyes narrowed. "Why, Roberto?" "After everything, why?" he demanded, needing to hear it from the traitor's own lips. Roberto's face twisted with hate. "Why? Because I spent decades watching you sit on a throne that should have been mine." His voice dripped venom. "I loved you like a son, Mateo, but your father's empire should have fallen to me. Instead, I had to live in your shadow." Elena gasped softly, but Roberto held her tighter. Mateo kept his stance steady, heart pounding. "I would have given you anything." "Anything, Roberto," he said, voice tight with hurt and fury. "All you had to do was ask." "Power isn't given, Mateo. It's taken. That's the first lesson of leadership, one you never learned." Roberto spat. "You were content thinking loyalty is earned with kindness, with mercy." He nearly snarled the last word. "It isn't, it's earned with fear." Mateo's stomach churned with a mix of anger and sadness. This man had been like a father to him. And now here they were, guns drawn in a warehouse of corpses. "You're wrong, old man," he said coldly. "And you fear me now, don't you?" Roberto sneered, glancing at the carnage through the office door. Outside in the dark warehouse, the sounds of struggle had died down. His forces were wiped out. "Perhaps I do," he admitted with a bitter laugh. "I taught you too well. But if I'm going down, I'm taking your precious Elena with me." He pressed the barrel against Elena's temple hard, making her whimper. Mateo's pulse thundered. His finger tightened slightly on his trigger. "Roberto," he warned, deadly calm. "If you hurt her, I swear—" "You're in no position to swear anything," Roberto barked, panic edging into his voice. He began inching toward the door with Elena as cover, perhaps hoping to escape into the warehouse or find another hostage among his men, unaware they were all either dead or captured. Mateo knew he had only a split-second window. He had to disable Roberto without letting him fire. His eyes flicked to Elena's. She went very still, sensing something about to happen. In a blur, Mateo pivoted and fired low. The bullet tore through Roberto's knee with surgical precision. Roberto screamed, his leg buckling. As he fell, his arm flailed wide, and the gun muzzle left Elena's head for an instant. Mateo lunged. He crossed the space in 2 strides and slammed Roberto's wrist against the doorframe. The pistol clattered from the traitor's grip. Roberto crumpled to the floor, clutching his shattered knee and cursing in agony. Mateo kicked, the gun far out of reach, and leveled his own pistol at Roberto's head. He was breathing hard, rage pulsing in his veins. Roberto glared up, sweat beading on his brow but still defiant. "It's over," Mateo said, voice like stone. Elena, trembling but free, moved behind Mateo, away from Roberto's reach. "Don't kill him," she cried suddenly, grabbing Mateo's arm. "Mateo, don't, please." Despite everything, she couldn't bear to see him commit cold-blooded murder. Mateo's jaw flexed. His finger was on the trigger. Nothing would be easier than to end Roberto Vernesi right now. His mentor-turned-betrayer looked up at him with a mix of fear and spite, daring him to do it. Slowly, agonizingly, Mateo eased his finger off the trigger. He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "No," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Not like this." He holstered the pistol. Instead, he grabbed Roberto by the collar and hauled him up, slamming him against the wall. Roberto groaned, the fight gone out of him as blood poured from his ruined knee. Mateo leaned in, voice low and deadly. "You'll rot in a cell for this," he growled. I want you alive so you can watch. Everything you tried to steal crumble to nothing. Roberto gave a broken, bitter laugh, but said nothing. 2 of Mateo's soldiers rushed in then, Marco among them. They took hold of Roberto, quickly binding his hands with zip ties. Roberto sagged between them, defeated. Ambulance is on the way for him, Marco muttered. We should clear out, boss. Cops will be here any minute. Mateo nodded curtly. Take him, and make sure the police get that recording of his confession. Marco flashed a rare grin. Will do. As Roberto was dragged away moaning, Mateo rushed to Elena. She was leaning against the desk for support, tears streaming down her face. Elena, he whispered, gently taking her face in his hands. His thumbs brushed her tears away. Mateo, she sobbed, relief and overwhelm in her voice. Then she was in his arms, and he was holding her tightly against him. You came for me, she managed, breaking into a teary smile against his shoulder. Always, he murmured into her hair. He closed his eyes, an immense wave of gratitude washing over him. She felt warm and alive in his arms. I've got you. You're safe now. Outside, faint blue and red lights flashed through the warehouse windows, police and paramedics arriving. Mateo knew they needed to leave, but for one more moment he just held Elena close, reassuring himself that she was really here. He finally pulled back, meeting her eyes. Are you hurt? He asked, gaze scanning over her bruises with worry. Elena shook her head. Just roughed up. She managed a shaky laugh. I've had worse from stiletto heels. Despite himself, Mateo smiled. Leave it to Elena to find humor now. He gently untied the rope still dangling from her wrists. She winced, rubbing where they'd chafed. Thank you, she whispered, eyes shining. You saved my life. Mateo's throat tightened. Actually, he said softly, it was Sophia who saved both of us. At the mention of their daughter, Elena gasped, suddenly frantic. Sophia, where is she? Is she okay? Mateo took her hand reassuringly. She's safe. She got away and warned me about the bomb. Bruno has her. We'll join them now. Elena's knees nearly buckled with relief. Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. She pressed a hand to her heart, closing her eyes briefly in silent thanks. Police officers cautiously entered the warehouse, guns drawn as Mateo led Elena out. But a couple of detective acquaintances on his payroll recognized him and stood down, eyeing the scene warily. In the confusion of multiple crime scenes, Mateo slipped away with Elena before anyone could stop them. Moments later, Mateo and Elena were in the back of a secure SUV driven by one of his loyal men. As they sped from Pier 39, Elena clung to Mateo's arm, as if afraid he'd vanish. He kept an arm protectively around her shoulders the whole ride, feeling her warmth. Neither spoke much. No words could capture what they'd just survived. When the SUV pulled up to a modest suburban safe house just before dawn, the front door flew open. Sophia stood on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, her small silhouette illuminated by the early light. The instant Elena stepped out of the car, Sophia bolted down the steps. "Mommy!" she cried, voice cracking with joy. Elena ran to meet her. She dropped to her knees in the dewy grass just in time to catch Sophia as the little girl hurled herself into her mother's arms. "Oh, mi vida, I'm here. I'm here," Elena sobbed, covering Sophia's face in kisses and running her hands over her to check for injuries. "Are you hurt? Let me see you. I'm okay, Mommy." Sophia giggled through happy tears as Elena fussed over her bandaged feet and bruises. Elena pressed gentle kisses to every scrape. She chided Sophia softly for running barefoot into danger, even as she smiled through her tears. Sophia just hugged her mother tighter, beaming now that they were together. Mateo approached them slowly, heart full to bursting. Sophia noticed him and her face lit up. She gently pulled back from Elena and grabbed her mother's hand. "Mom, it's okay. Mateo saved us," she said, as if presenting him. Elena stood, keeping an arm around Sophia, her dark eyes locked onto Mateo's. For a moment they simply looked at one another, 1,000 unspoken words passing between former lovers. Then Elena bridged the gap and threw her free arm around Mateo, pulling him into an embrace alongside their daughter. Mateo closed his eyes, wrapping one arm around Elena's waist and the other around Sophia's small shoulders. He held them both as if he'd never let go. Sophia was sandwiched warmly between her parents, squeaking in surprise at the group hug, then giggling happily. "You came back to us," Elena whispered against Mateo's chest. her voice thick with emotion. Matteo kissed the top of her head. "I'll always come back," he promised, his voice quietly fierce. A discreet distance away, Bruno leaned against the SUV, watching the reunion with a faint smile. His job was done. He caught Matteo's eye and gave a respectful nod before he and the other men slipped away to give the family privacy. Before leaving, Bruno clasped Matteo's hand firmly. "I'm glad you're all right, boss," he said quietly, relief evident in his eyes. Matteo gripped his old friend's shoulder in gratitude. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Bruno, thank you." Bruno gave a small nod and a rare smile. "Always, boss." With that, he and the others took their leave, disappearing into the awakening city. Inside the safe house, Bruno's wife had set out blankets and hot tea. Elena and Sophia curled up on the couch, never letting each other go. Dawn's gentle glow filtered through the curtained windows as mother and daughter talked softly, Elena reassuring herself that Sophia truly was unharmed, and Sophia excitedly recounting how she'd snuck into Matteo's garage. Matteo quietly debriefed Bruno one last time on the phone, confirming Roberto was in custody, and the Rossi situation would be diffused. Enzo had already disavowed Roberto's actions. News of Roberto's treachery would soon reverberate through the underworld, sending shockwaves among friend and foe alike. The betrayal of Don De Luca's trusted consigliere would become a cautionary tale in every backroom deal. But Matteo found he no longer cared about the underworld's whispers. All that mattered now was the wounded woman leaning on him, and the little girl looking at him like he was her hero. When Elena and Sophia finally broke from their embrace, Elena beckoned Matteo over with a warm smile. Sophia wriggled out of her mother's lap and ran to Matteo, practically tackling him with a hug to his legs. He laughed and scooped her up into his arms. Sophia pulled back slightly and looked between her parents. Does this mean we're a family again?" she asked in a small, hopeful voice. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but they were happy ones now. She brushed back Sophia's hair tenderly. "Yes, mi amor. We're together. We're a family." Matteo felt something in his chest that had been clenched for years finally relax. He met Elena's gaze over Sophia's shoulder. "If you'll have me," he added softly. Elena responded by leaning in and kissing him, gently, right there with their daughter in his arms. Sophia giggled and covered her eyes, as any child might at seeing her parents kiss. Outside, birds began to chirp in the trees as the world kept turning. Oblivious to the night of blood and fire this little family had endured, in that quiet living room, nothing else mattered. The first golden rays of sunrise peeked through the safe-house window as Matteo sat with Sophia asleep in his lap and Elena resting against his shoulder. In that quiet dawn, the Mafia boss who had lived by violence felt something within him mend. He gently kissed his daughter's hair, unspeakably grateful. Sophia had saved not only his life, but also the goodness in his heart. None of the bloodshed or betrayal of yesterday mattered now. His empire, his power, none of it compared to this fragile, precious peace. Whatever the future held, Matteo silently vowed that he would do anything to protect his family and keep them safe. He held them close as morning light washed over the room, finally allowing himself to feel human again. Hours ago, he had faced death and treachery. Now, with these two safe in his arms, he felt truly alive. He was a father. He was loved. And for the first time in a long, long while, he was home.